Welcome everybody to AFFF 21 Radio. You're listening to the Weekend Wrap-Up.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Weekend Wrap-Up here on AFFF 21 Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Ferrara, and this week, this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit more about our previous episode where we talked about firefighter cancer awareness, some PFAS issues. We're going to get into On Scene, our segment of On Scene, talking about radios, and of course, we're going to have some shout-outs. So let's get started by discussing Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. Now, last episode, we talked about how the trend, the line of duty deaths has really transitioned from stress-related emergencies, such as heart attacks, cardiac arrests, to cancer. We're seeing firefighters 20, 30, 40, upwards 60 years from exposure, from their initial exposure, succumbing to cancer that can be traced back to those dates where they were initially exposed. And because they were on the job, we, the fire service, are now looking at that as a line of duty death. For not too long ago, really, those deaths were not considered line of duty because, you think about it, 50, 60 years after you retire, you're not on the job, you're in retired status. They didn't see that as an LODD. But now, fortunately, they are being recognized. Benefits are being, provided because of that line of duty death. Obviously, we want LODDs at 0 every year. Is that realistic? Yes and no, depending on who you talk to. But our ultimate goal is to reduce the number of firefighter fatalities out there, whether it's actually on the job or years down the road. But one thing, I want to talk about this episode is firefighter suicide awareness. Now, we've talked about health and wellness, in terms of stress-related, emergencies and fatalities for firefighters. But I want to piggyback on that in regard, when talking about firefighter suicides. And you're going to see me look up, I've got a couple screens here. You're going to see me look up at my notes here. And, let's face it, folks, we are not immune from stress, from depression, from thoughts of suicide. And I say that because of the nature of the job, the scenes that we encounter, the horrific images, we roll up on, burn victims, motor vehicle accident, trauma victims. It's some of these things that we encounter. You see them in the movies, and yeah, that's fake. But when you're responding and you're on scene, it's not a movie. I mean, it's reality, and we have to deal with it. We are there. We are the responders. It's our job to go ahead and mitigate the incident, treat the victims. It's I hate to say it, but it's that while we're on scene, it's the suck it up and move on mentality, and then deal with it afterwards. But that dealing with it afterwards is how we prevent suicides. And we're gonna talk about that over the next hour here, in this episode. So, a study conducted by the Ruderman Foundation found in 2017 that at least 103 firefighter suicides occurred compared to 93 line of duty deaths. Now, let me say that again. In 2017, the Ruderman Foundation, they found there were at least 103 firefighter suicides compared to 93 line of duty deaths. So, there's, when we talk, I just talked about, with the LODDs, those suicides were not included in the annual LODD stats, and because they most likely did not happen on the job, they happened afterwards after their shift. But they don't count that towards a line of duty death. Is that going to change? We're not sure. I think it's being considered, but that's down the road. Furthermore, the study, the Ruderman Foundation study, cited suicide as a result of a mental illness, and it includes depression and PTSD. Now, in the military, we heard of PTSD. The VA used to call it shell shock and a few other terms throughout the years, until PTSD was the standard, the norm. And we in the military, we did a fairly good job in terms of suicide prevention. They're still occurring, unfortunately. There's a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort into prevention, and a lot of times I witnessed squadrons, units, groups that would say, we're going through all of this, we're doing a great job, we haven't had any suicides, that's never going to happen here. And then all of a sudden, boom, you get a military member within that organization commit suicide, and then suddenly it's like, okay, we dropped the ball somewhere, the individual fell through the cracks, what happened? And then even more suicide prevention is put out there. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. It's sort of a reactive approach. We need to be really proactive when it comes to firefighter suicide awareness, and really suicide awareness overall. So, let's face it, folks, we as firefighters, like I said, we encounter some grisly shit out there. We're not robots, we're not drones. We don't all deal with it the same. I'm fairly seasoned. I've seen some gnarly stuff throughout my career. I'm not saying I can suppress it with ease. I'm not ice cold when it comes to, with that, but, I've seen stuff, gore really doesn't bother me, but that's not to say the new recruit, the young kid that's coming into the fire department, that's not to say that they're immune to it, because, let's face it, they may have never seen anything like this. Hang on. I just got turned down the pager here. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over here so we turn it down so you guys can hear me. So that's not to say the newbies, the new recruits coming into the department, they may be able to deal with it. They may not be able to deal with it. I've seen a lot of new recruits come in and be like, they want to be a firefighter, they want to be an emergency responder, but that first call, unfortunately, it could be a traumatic incident, and they're like, I can't do this anymore. That's just the reality of it, and it happens. So, yeah, we as firefighters, we're expected to be heroic, courageous. We run into, fire as people are trying to run out. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have individual feelings or individual way of dealing with things. But it's a team effort. We can't get through life by ourselves. It takes, the support of others. And that's really what, firefighter suicide awareness is about. Reporter Drew Brown from WGEM, in one of his reports, he had stated, of the 18,000 law enforcement organizations across the United States, approximately 3 to 5% have suicide prevention training programs. And that number sort of, concerned me when I first saw that. I'm like, okay, 18,000 law enforcement organizations, and believe me, they go, they encounter a lot of gruesome stuff out there as well. But 18,000 law enforcement organizations, and only about 3 to 5% have suicide awareness training programs. That's a little disturbing. And I'd be willing to say, when we look at the fire service, those numbers are probably about the same in terms of percentage of organizations that have a program in place. Probably less with volunteer departments, simply because they don't have the resources, they don't have the staffing to deal with that. So that, we're going to talk about, bringing in professional help, professional support to assist fire emergency service organizations. So first and foremost, before we can implement a solution, and this applies to anything, before we can implement a solution, we have to understand the problem or the need. And, the problem being it looks like there's an increase in firefighter suicides. So the need is to obviously reduce that. So how do we solve that? And one thing that we need to do and really emphasize and focus on is how to recognize the signs of individuals being in danger of harming themselves, harming others, and because a lot of these folks, when they get to that point, they feel lost, they feel unappreciated, they feel closed in, and so on. And then this includes ourselves. We have to look at ourselves and say, recognize these points in our life, that could trigger suicidal thoughts, suicidal tendencies. And we have to recognize those and say, hold on a second, I'm at that point. I'm gonna need some somebody to listen to me and talk to. We also need to establish policies, procedures, protocols regarding suicide prevention. I started, I've talked about this before. I started my fire service career in 1988 as a volunteer firefighter here in Central PA, actually right down the road here from where the studio's at. And back then we had some serious incidents to where we would bring in a critical incident stress debrief team, and firefighters as a group, we'd sit down and talk. And it's looking back at it now, there was that macho mentality. It's like, oh, I'm good. I can hack, coach. I don't need to talk about it. But in reality, there was individuals that wanted to talk, but they didn't want to do so in a public, in front of their peers, because they would have felt embarrassed or anything like that. So, it's important when we incorporate these programs to instill, comfort in everybody that says, hey, you're not going to be intimidated. You're not going to be embarrassed by coming to talk. Because folks, when they come and they express their concerns about, hey, I'm having a bad day and things, they do so in confidence. And you have to assure them, say, hey, what's going on here in this office or between us, it's not getting out to everybody. It's going to be between us and those that are need to know. Obviously the fire chief, chief officers of the organization, and then professionals as well. So we have to ensure a safe work environment. We have to have an open door policy per se, to where folks feel they feel comfortable coming to talk. Not that they're going to get punished, ridiculed, or anything like that. So, if you're one of the supervisors or even a fellow coworker, know your swim lane. And Chief Goldfellow and I talked about this a few episodes ago about if somebody comes to you and asks you for advice, if it's not in your swim lane, don't try to bullshit your way through it and give advice that you think is good, but it turns out it may not be. So, when somebody comes to talk to you, obviously listen to them, but know where to send them, know where to take them, put them in contact with the professionals. And, it's like I said, I'm not a psychologist. There's a few psychologists, within the fire service, that's their swim lane. But for most of us out there, we're not the armchair quarterback psychologists. So please don't act like one. Don't give advice, that you think is good. something you saw on, Dr. Phil or some other TV show, because it very well could end up doing more harm than good. Know who your professionals are. Professional support, behavioral health specialists within your community. Reach out to your local medical care facilities. Most of them have a behavioral health section. Reach out to them and say, hey, you're from so-and-so fire department. How about come on down, introduce yourself, help us get a suicide prevention program up and running. Once you create that rapport with them, now you have a point of contact you can steer people towards. And like I said, invite them down. They will be more than happy to come down, introduce themselves, explain what they do, and provide you with a wealth of information. So reach out to whoever it is locally. Now, when someone comes to talk to you, you have to be an active listener. I can't tell you how many times in the military, you go into the supervisor's office, the boss's office, and they're focused on something else. They're listening to you, but they're really not listening. So you're standing there explaining, how many times have you done this in the morning meetings, shift meetings? They go around the table, everybody's saying their thing, and somebody's, taking notes. My God, how many times you watch members of Congress do this all the time during hearings? You've got witnesses providing testimony, critical testimony, and the camera pans the members on the committee, and they're up there on their cell phones, they're talking between each other, they're not actively listening. When it comes to suicide prevention, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm having a bad day, can we talk? Stop what you're doing. Okay? If you can't stop right away, have them follow you. Okay, the last thing you want to do is turn them away. So just say, hey, hang out with me for a second. Let me finish up what I'm doing, and then we'll go talk in private. Especially if they are demonstrating signs that they may harm themselves or others, do not leave them. Okay, keep them close hold, and like I said, say, hey, let me help. Invite them. Say, hey, can you help me wrap this up, and then we'll go talk. Get them involved, get their mind off of, whatever it may be a bad day for that little bit of time, make them feel appreciated, make them feel, involved. You'll be surprised how much that goes. It goes a long way. And then, let them know you're going to help them seek out professional services. But, before you give them information, steer them in that direction. Like I said, make sure you know who those points of contact are. The last thing you want to do is have somebody come in, say, hey, can you help me out here? And then you don't know who it is, because then they're going to be like, that trust. They're going to question, do you even, are you even interested? You're not taking suicide awareness seriously if you don't even, have a point of contact in advance. And please, I don't care who you are. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm having a bad day. Can we talk? Keep that conversation between yourselves. And like I said before, those that are in the know, that need to know, that's most likely going to be your fire chief, and then obviously healthcare professionals. It's how many times have we seen in a firehouse, the firehouse gossip? Something happens, and before the end of the shift, it's everybody and their mother knows what the hell went down in a firehouse, and then you got two companies down the road that call up and be like, what's going on? And it's like, how the hell did this get out? Okay, keep these conversations to yourself. It's nobody needs to know the individual's laundry. Okay, you don't need to air their laundry. They came to you in confidence. They trust that you're going to keep it private, secured. Respect that, because otherwise you just voided all trust, and they're not gonna talk. They're not gonna seek professional help. So, going back to knowing, who these points of contact are, make sure you have their phone numbers, email addresses, as well. So, the IAFF, as I search the internet, for this information through all the fire pages that we monitor, the IAFF, very great source of information regarding suicide prevention training out there. And they have an online behavioral health awareness course, a peer support program, resiliency training, and much, much more. And most of it's out there. It's free. They have workshops, but there's free programs, free training that you can take. And just going over, as I went through the IAFF page, there's some stats that they put up there and regarding firefighter suicide prevention. And these numbers really got me thinking. So they surveyed 1,027 firefighters. Okay. And the stats come back and it said, of those 1,027 firefighters that were surveyed, 8% had suicidal thoughts or ideas. It didn't get into details as to what they were, but just broad brush, 8% had suicidal thoughts or ideas. 2% made plans to commit suicide. Okay, so it went beyond the idea. I mean, they were planning it. 5% made a suicidal attempt. And again, it doesn't say, how that, what that attempt involved, but 5% made a suicidal attempt. And then 4% actually harmed themselves, but did not commit suicide. So, that's those numbers, 8, 2, 5, and 4%, of, 1,027. It may not seem significant, but come on, folks, let's be honest, one suicide is too many. We have to make sure we have to be proactive in this and, keep the suicides at zero. Is that realistic? Yes, no, maybe, who knows? But that should be a goal of every department and be like, look, we're going to take care of our own. We're going to look out for each other. We can't afford to lose just, one emergency responder anywhere. When you look at the fire service as a whole, you can't put a price tag on us. We can't afford to lose not just one individual. I mean, we're let's be real. I look at emergency responders as being priceless, and when we lose one, it's a significant loss to the fire service as a whole, and of course to family and friends. So, just some signs and symptoms the IAFF had put out there. Of someone really having a bad day and maybe considering suicide. Now, these are just some things that was thrown out there. So. Talking about feeling trapped or wanting to die, okay, that's a red flag. It's you want to listen to that person and find out what's going on. Expressing feeling of hopelessness. Somebody could be a financial issue. They feel hopeless and be like, oh, it's I'm at my wit's end. I and go from there. It's feeling like there's no reason to live. I've encountered individuals at that point in their life. We've talked through it. Everybody's got value. Everybody's got worth in life. And, we just have to let them know that. Worrying about being a burden to others. Gosh, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard individuals say that. Because, they're having a bad day or, they can't do anything right. They've got that black cloud over their head. Things go wrong for them. Don't make them feel bad. Just say, hey, these things happen. Figure out what's going on and help them work through it. Turn things around. Increasing drug and alcohol use. We've seen that. That's a classic, sign. But, again, that may not indicate they're having suicidal tendencies, but that's just something that typically, statistically is out there. Partaking in reckless behavior. Now, I'm not saying get it in everybody's shit and, track them 24/7, but, we in the fire service, especially small houses, you're going to know the normal routine of your crew. So when they all of a sudden start, they go out and they buy a motorcycle, and it's like, this cat never, I would never pick him for, being a motorcycle rider. They start doing skydiving, rock climbing, things of that nature. And all of a sudden it's like, what the hell is going on? That could be a trigger. That could be something you want to look at. Sleeping too much or too little. Again, this goes into depression. People just will be like, I just don't want to deal with it. I'm going to sleep in. Or too little. They're drinking a lot of coffee. They're staying up. Long days. And then you find them napping on the job and everything like that. So look for that. Withdrawing or isolating from others. All of a sudden, Firefighter Joe, he's always been around, but then all of a sudden, you're like, hey, where's Joe at? What's going on? Find out what's going on. And then, of course, displaying extreme mood swings, again, with Firefighter Joe. He's always joking around and everything like that, but then all of a sudden he comes in and, turns into an asshole, and it's like, whoa, what's going on? Keep track of that, monitor that, find out what's going on. So, this information you can find on the IAFF website. If you go to IAFF.org/behavioral-health, and it's IAFF.org/behavioral-health, or if you just go to their website and type in firefighter suicide awareness, you're going to find the information there. So, in addition to finding that information, I want to give you a phone number. Write this down. Put it in your phone as a contact. Keep it handy. Put it up on the job board at the station house. This number is to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and the number is, and it's here in the United States. It's 1-800-273-TALK. Again, that number is 1-800-273-8255. Now, folks, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Someone's going to pick up this phone because it's staffed 24/7, 365 days a year. So, if you're in Australia and you call this number, somebody's going to pick up that phone and they're going to listen to you. They're going to talk with you. And they're going to help you find the professional services that could potentially save your life, prevent you from committing suicide. So, take this number down. I'm serious. if you want to tattoo it to your arm, go for it so you always have it. But keep this number handy because, like I said, it's, we often say, oh, that'll never happen to me. And it doesn't happen in our house. But then all of a sudden it does. Or you find yourself at that point to where, you're hopeless. You're at your wit's end. These folks, and it's completely anonymous. You don't have to tell them your name. You don't have to tell them anything other than, hey, I need to talk. I need, and go from there. They help you steer the conversation. But yeah, it's call, if you, again, keep that number, handy. And don't be afraid to ask for help. My gosh, like I said, we should have an environment in the fire service to where we can discuss things openly without being ridiculed. Now, granted, we ride each other, and make fun of some things, but when it comes to this is not a joking matter. We need to really take it seriously. And like I said before, we're human. We all have our own individual feelings, individual ways of dealing with things. It's often when we allow things to build up and we don't get it off our chest, we don't get it off our shoulders. That's when we find ourselves in a situation where it could end badly, or we see individuals in that situation, it could end badly. So, I've said this before, firefighting is a team effort. We don't put fires out by ourselves. We don't rescue victims from vehicle accidents. We don't treat patients by ourselves. Well, sometimes we do, depending on the situation. But at the end of the day, it's a team. It's an organization. And we need to be proactive in fire prevention, the fire service. We need to be proactive in suicide prevention as well. And it's a team effort when things happen. So, So that I'm going to wrap it up with that segment. With that said, so getting into our next segment, your favorite, not mine, PFAS. We just can't get away from this, and some of the social media groups that I belong to on social media. There's been some comments made about down in San Angelo, Texas area, Goodfellow Air Force Base, home of the DoD Fire Academy. And this has been going on for years, decades almost, about the taste and the smell of the drinking water down there. It stinks. It tastes bad. Everybody said, well, it's because of, Lake Nasty, Lake Nasworthy down there. It's just how it's always been. Well, there was some comments. I made some comments on there about, hey, has anybody thought about, AFFF contamination down there? And it sort of got off the rails a little bit with a particular individual. Individual was a former DoD Fire Academy superintendent, was there for a couple years. And it almost seemed like they didn't believe that AFFF could be a contributor to the smell and the taste of the water down there. Well, fortunately, there's the internet, and within the internet exists unclassified military documents that shows over time that AFFF contamination has flowed outside the fence line, if you will, of Goodfellow Air Force Base. And, as well, in addition to the AFFF, we've learned that on Goodfellow Air Force Base, there's a few landfills. What's buried in those landfills, we really don't know. I mean, it dates back to the 50s. So it's most likely they're unlined. Whatever was buried in there, chemicals, products, who knows what, seeped into the aquifer under Goodfellow Air Force Base. Now, there's a huge aquifer that lies under Goodfellow Air Force Base, San Angelo, Texas, and the areas surrounding it. Okay, so you've heard me talk about this before, especially at Cannon Air Force Base. AFFF contamination got into the aquifer system there, polluted the wells. People pumped water from the wells for drinking water, consumed that water, got sick. Well, this particular individual that was a former superintendent said that the city does not get water from the aquifers around Goodfellow, but like I said, there's one huge aquifer under that area that feeds into various areas within the San Angelo community. In addition to this research, one document that I found, it states, and I quote, groundwater movement in the area of GAFB, and that's short for Goodfellow Air Force Base, is generally towards the Concho River and its tributaries. Now, those unfamiliar with San Angelo, Texas, you've got this river, Concho River. You got the North River, or North Concho, South Concho. South Concho runs pretty much west of Goodfellow Air Force Base, flows directly into Lake Nasworthy. And this river lies approximately 1.85 miles west of Goodfellow Air Force Base. And like I said, it pours directly into Lake Nasworthy, which is approximately 5.5 miles southwest of Goodfellow Air Force Base. And Lake Nasworthy, it's been identified by San Angelo City officials, Goodfellow Air Force Base officials, as being one of several sources of drinking water to residents of the San Angelo area, as well as those on base. So, because of this AFFF concerns down at Goodfellow, the Air Force come in, they sampled 47 wells within a half mile to a mile radius of the base. And while they have not publicly stated what those levels are, they expressed some concern with the numbers, and that concern caused them to distribute bottled drinking water to the affected areas. Now, you don't normally do this unless there's contamination in the drinking water. Cannon Air Force Base did the exact same thing. The numbers come back elevated. The PFAS numbers come back elevated. And because the wells were contaminated, people were, getting sick. Livestock could not be fed with this water. The Air Force came in and said, we're going to supply bottled drinking water. So there's some concern there. We're trying to get the numbers, but historically the Air Force sets on these numbers, and then it takes right to know requests, time, money to get these, and then once they do provide the numbers, is it truly the numbers that they found? So my question is, they, like I said, they went out a half mile to a mile outside Goodfellow. Why didn't they go all the way to the Concho River shoreline? Why didn't they go that extra 0.85 miles, up and down the South Concho? In my opinion, based on what I've seen and heard from the DoD, I think they're afraid they're afraid of what they're going to find. They know what they're going to find. They're going to find contamination. So like I said, I mean, if that contamination reaches the Concho River and the Concho River flows into Lake Nasworthy, they pump the water out of Lake Nasworthy, it's just a never-ending cycle. You're contaminating the soil, gets into the aquifer, gets into the river, goes to the lake. They pump out the water from the lake through pipes, feed it right back to unsuspecting residents. So furthermore, the government officials, you've heard me talk about this, they continuously mislead the media into believing AFFF high expansion foam is perfectly safe. In fact, Matt Cerna from Fox West Texas had reported and stated in an October 2020 report on the well sampling, basically stated PFAS, PFOS, and PFOA may not kill a person or a pet, but according to some medical sources, it's still a threat to the community. Well, folks, you've heard me say this time and time again. The DoD has known since 1973, the Air Force has known since 1973, PFAS and PFOA are toxic to fish, and they cause tumors in lab mice or in lab animals. I have the reports to prove that. So why are we here 50 plus years later saying that that's not true? Why are they denying the fact, their own reports that says PFAS and PFOA via firefighting foam is toxic to fish and causes tumors? I mean, it's crazy to think why government officials are still saying firefighting foam is safe and it's not hazardous to humans. So you've heard me say this over and over. This is why I get so pissed off with former and current government officials, military officials, military fire emergency service officials who refuse to talk about this, refuse to acknowledge that firefighting foam was hazardous, still is hazardous. It's man-made. I challenge any of them to pour a pint and drink it. If they claim it's perfectly safe, pour yourself a pint. Step up to the bar, pour yourself a pint, have at it. And then 20, 30, 40 years down the road, we'll see what happens. If it doesn't kill you instantly, we'll see what happens down the road. So, I've spoken with individuals in the past who went through the DoD Fire Academy past 5 years or so. And they claim that not once were they told of the hazards regarding AFFF in high expansion foam. In fact, some of them were saying, hey, out in the field, we're just told it's soap and water, it's perfectly safe. And then we provide them the research information and they're baffled. They're like, this isn't what we were led to believe. So again, why are firefighters being misled about these products? So to the listeners down in San Angelo, Texas, Goodfellow Air Force Base area, I encourage you to reach out to your local authorities, and even the base authorities and demand water sample reports. Now, in their defense, it's likely they were not testing for PFAS, because PFAS only popped up on the radar here in the past couple of years, and this is around the country. Water companies were not actively testing for PFAS in the drinking water systems. Well, now with all the knowledge, all the information that's out there, they are starting to test for this. Some folks are taking action more so than others. But ask them if they are actively testing for PFAS, whether it's PFAS, PFOS, PFOA, or a gamut of others. There's 6 to 12 PFAS chemicals associated with firefighting foam. So ask them if they're testing for that, and if so, what are the results? You as consumers, individuals that are drinking the water, you have a right to know what that is. And if they refuse to provide that information, reach out to your members of Congress, whether it's a Congress, House of Representative or Senate, and demand action be done. File a congressional report. If you're near a military installation, the military hates congressional inquiries. But again, you have a right to know about these things. So, like I said before, I've watched the DoD, the Air Force intentionally avoid this topic. They keep saying, "Hey, we're gonna continue research, testing." They've put these timelines out there for completion 4 or 5 years down the road. Well, folks, in between that time, you've got individuals that are becoming sick. They're dying without answers, and it's the answers need to be achieved now, not later. Additionally, for those that may not be aware, there was an incident at Lifeline Air Force Base involving an aircraft hangar. There was an accidental foam dump, high expansion foam, and guess what? It filled the hangar up. I've seen the photos. It's not good, folks. I mean, you can literally see where the foam was pouring out of the hangar doors 3/4 of the way up, filling up the ramp. And, here you're going to have cleanup involved. What happened with all of that foam? Was it washed down the drains? Where did that mixture end up at? And we're talking thousands of gallons here. This isn't just some small spill you can clean up, with a towel. I mean, this was a mass application, a mass spill. It's going to have an environmental impact. And I'm curious if those that were tasked to clean it up, it doesn't appear the firefighters were. It looks like the civil engineers and others were, tasked to clean this up. Were they provided proper personnel protective equipment to clean this up? Were they briefed on the hazards affiliated with high expansion foam? Because I can tell you right now, the foam that was used, it's toxic. These incidents have occurred at other installations. I've got the safety data sheets that shows this high expansion foam is indeed toxic. It contains unknown toxins, a high percentage. We don't know what those are, but yet the military keeps coming out and saying, "Oh, it's similar to dish soap. It's perfectly safe." Bullshit. It's not. Until they can prove that, we've seen the data. These foams are not safe. So, you hear me rag on DoD leaders, Air Force leaders. Last episode, I was talking about the Air Force fire chief who's retiring. All I want is for these individuals to come out and be open and transparent about AFFF. Come out publicly and say, "Hey, this is what we're doing as being proactive. This is where we are in terms of swapping out," because the military, the DoD, per the 2020 NDAA states, by October 1st, 2024, they have to go to a fluorine-free foam. So again, they just spent all of this money going, to a C6 foam, AFFF, but now they got to spend more money retrofitting, buying new equipment to go to a fluorine-free foam. Will it happen in 2024? Well, we'll wait and see. But again, that's all I want. I think that's what a lot of people want. Just be open and transparent, leaders. And talk about this, and educate folks. That's really all I got to say on that. It's sadly former military members and military firefighters who are dealing with cancer and debilitating illnesses due to repeated exposure to AFFF, high expansion foam, PFAS. They've stated to me, not one past or present DOD or Air Force official has apologized for putting firefighters at undue risk of exposure to AFFF. Were those individuals, those leaders, uninformed about the hazards? I'm not saying they weren't. They very well, may not have been aware. But the fact is that, since 1973, the documents are out there that shows, AFFF has been known to be toxic and hazardous. So why weren't better precautions made? Why were we told as military firefighters for decades AFFF was just soap and water? Why were we permitted to wash our vehicles, spray kids during fire prevention visits, do laundry with the stuff? I mean, why were we allowed to do that when there was evidence out there? There was documents published, but kept close hold that really said, no, don't do that. So again, apologize, be open and transparent, apologize. And I think in doing that, I think they're going to be respected a little bit more. But if you keep avoiding this, that trust factor, it's being eroded. The longer you stay quiet about this, the more you avoid it, the more people lose trust in you. And again, to those exposed, and there's hundreds of thousands of you out there, military firefighters and even civilian firefighters. I promise you, you're not going to be disrespected by me or anyone here at AFFF 21. I am sorry for you being exposed and have to deal with medical issues that I can't even imagine that some of you are going through, and your families are going through. It's not your fault that you were exposed. You did nothing wrong, but trust me, I will continue fighting for you, fighting for answers, fighting for accountability of those that knew, those that know today, and are doing nothing to prevent unnecessary exposure. So I'm holding those folks accountable. If they get pissed off at me, so be it. I don't, I got thick skin. I can take it. You want to call me out on social media, go for it. Usually when they get defensive and you hit them with facts, they automatically go on the defense, and try to counter what you're throwing out there. But, the numbers don't lie, especially when they're coming from, the military itself. So enough with PFAS, folks, enough with PFAS. So next segment, on the scene, folks, you've heard me talk about this last episode about radios and why some like myself, we are stating every firefighter needs to be in possession of a radio. At the very minimum, firefighters that are entering a structure need to have a radio. And I'm repeating this topic based on an incident that recently occurred down in Maryland that really could have ended badly. It resulted in firefighters being injured and burned, but it could have ended badly. We could have lost 4 firefighters on this fire. So on Wednesday, February 10th at 12:42 a.m., Northeast firefighters were dispatched to a structure fire with a possible entrapment. Now, this structure was a trailer. Looked like, from the photos I've seen, looked like a single wide trailer. Upon arrival, 4 Northeast firefighters made entry into the structure, who a short time later declared a mayday when the fire conditions worsened inside. And 4 firefighters, they sustained injuries while attempting to escape through a window. 2 of the firefighters sustained burns to 40 to 50% of their bodies. Fortunately, all 4 firefighters are recovering. We did not have a fatality, thank God. But I want to play with you. I want to play an audio that we obtained from firefighterclosecalls.com, Billy Goldfeder's, Chief Goldfeder's website. And it highlights why I am so adamant about firefighters having a radio. I mean, this audio, you're going to hear it here in a second. This audio is impactful. I'm going to play it twice so you can hear it. I'm going to play it, talk a little bit, and then play it again so you pick up on some things that I want to highlight. But like I said, it's powerful to say the least. So let me go ahead and play this for you real quick. Stand by a second.
Dispatch command. Go ahead, dispatch. You're discretion on tower 3 with 2. Dispatch taking hold. Dispatch on units, Mayday has been declared on Officer 4 and Mayday on Officer 4, 0058.
All right, folks, like I said, that audio obtained straight from firefighterclosecalls.com highlights why it is imperative. It is imperative that firefighters working inside, every damn firefighter needs to have a radio. You heard me last episode talk about this. With firefighters, think of what you just heard in that audio. Now think of those 4 firefighters, only one had a radio and it malfunctioned, or none of them had a radio and they were inside. Those Mayday calls were called over a radio. That's actual volume. Imagine those firefighters trying to call a Mayday through the walls of that trailer to someone outside. There's no way in hell somebody outside would be able to hear what you just heard on that radio Mayday. There's noise. There's a ton of noise outside. A lot of chaos going on. You're inside of a fire. Towards the end of that audio, you can actually hear the crackling of the fire. I mean, these firefighters, they had direct flame contact. Some of the pages that are out there that shows their turnout gear, shows their SCBA, it's charred, it's melted. How the hell they got out of there, with some of their SCBAs intact, it's an absolute miracle. But I want to play it again for you. Listen to it. Listen towards the end, that crackle of the fire. Listen to how low their voice is, and imagine had they not had a radio trying to call for help.
Dispatch command. Go ahead, dispatch. Your discretion on tower 3 with 2. Dispatch taking hold. Dispatch on units, Mayday has been declared on Officer 4 and Mayday on Officer 4, 0058.
All right, folks, there you have it. It's just, like I said, how they got out of there alive. It's a miracle. Thank God they did. But talk about this in your firehouses. Ask yourselves, why you don't have radios for every interior firefighter at the minimum. So if you head over to firefighterclosecalls.com, that's firefighterclosecalls.com, look for this on there. It's going to talk about the update. It's actually called Update Maryland Firefighters Mayday and Radio Traffic Mayday Checklist. It's dated February 10th, 2021. It's going to have a link to this audio. When you scroll down, there's, a checklist, some things, with the Mayday, what you should be doing, what you should be asking for. There's a sample Mayday checklist. Make sure that you have a Mayday SOP in place. If you don't, get your ass to work and create one. This audio right here should be all the reason you need to say we need to really take a hard look at this and make sure that we're protected. We have a means of communicating. So thank God these firefighters, they're recovering. They got a long road ahead of them. We're thinking of them. We support their recovery. Make sure that you let them know that you're thinking about them as well. So our last segment here, I want to give, I love giving shout outs to firefighters, emergency responders, organizations out there, and, going through firefighter news around the world. Our first shout out for this episode is going to go to the volunteers from Hampshire Fire and Rescue Services in the United Kingdom. And these volunteers over there, these firefighters, they joined forces with nurses and doctors at the University Hospital Southampton's intensive care unit. And you're thinking, okay, what did these firefighters do? Well, with COVID-19 going on, hospital staff, it's taken a toll on them. So the firefighters stepped up and said, hey, we're here, we're going to help you out. And what they're doing is helping move patients onto their stomachs. It's a technique called proning. And I thought, what does this involve? Why are they turning patients onto their stomachs? Well, here it turns out doctors had found turning COVID-19 patients onto their stomachs or their front side actually relieves pressure on vital organs and assists with breathing. Thought that was pretty cool. So, in addition to, turning these patients, the volunteers are also assisting with driving ambulances, training to administer vaccines within the hospital and clinics. They respond to life-threatening medical emergencies as co-responders. And here's where they deserve a double shout out, is because they are assisting community members with doing grocery shopping and collecting their prescriptions. This is what public relations, community service is all about. Yeah, we as firefighters, we as emergency responders, we go out there, we respond to fires, vehicle accidents, EMS emergencies, hazmat, you name it, it's out there. But to take the time out of your day, off-duty time to help out, and even the little things of going grocery shopping, that relieves that stress, that feeling of hopelessness, is that, doing those little things and showing that, individuals they're acknowledged. They have meaning, they have purpose, they're not being ignored. And I'm talking about community members, That's the ultimate give back to the community, what the firefighters from the UK are doing. So, hats off to them. Great job over there. Keep up the great work. We here at the Weekend Wrap Up fully support and love what you're doing over there. So our second shout out goes to Russell Scholes. He's a volunteer firefighter from, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Balmoral, New South Wales. Now, Russell and many other firefighters, they're battling bushfires in Australia, and they're pretty significant over there. So, unfortunately, Russell's home was completely destroyed by one of the fires, but that did not stop him from protecting his community. So instead of going home, now mind you, he was aware that this fire was going to affect his home, so he took precautions and started moving out some of the valuable items and everything like that. But knowing that the fire was impinging upon his residential area, and most likely his home was going to be affected, he still went out, volunteered with his department, and attempted to protect the majority of the community. So the next morning, he comes home, finds his house completely burned to the ground. Hit him like a ton of bricks, punch in the gut. But as he was talking to a BBC reporter, he stated, and I quote, "It's only a thing. My family is safe, my animals are safe, and we help protect the community. So for me, that was more important than the house." Well, Russell, we here at the Weekend Wrap Up, we appreciate your dedication to the job, putting aside your personal possessions in order to protect the community. And I do trust that your community, your firehouse, appreciates your effort, and they're going to be there to help you rebuild and continue their support, as you demonstrate personal sacrifice and leadership. So, I mean, it takes a lot of willpower to know your possessions are going to get destroyed, but you leave that behind to go help others. I mean, that's a sacrifice, personal sacrifice. You got to respect that. So hats off to Russell over there in New South Wales. So, folks, that's going to do it for this episode here in the Weekend Wrap Up. As always, if you have questions or comments, please send them to me. Our email address here at the studio is podcast, PODCAST, at AFFSO21.com. That's podcast at AFFSO21.com. And please be sure to check out our parent company, AFFSO21.com. You'll learn a little bit more about my experience, what the company itself does out there in terms of supporting fire protection emergency services. And for those that are watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to our channel. Down in the lower corner, you're going to see our little logo, a fire symbol. Hover over that, click subscribe. We want to see our numbers increase because, as you know, for our podcast listeners, FeedSpot has ranked us number 6. We are striving for number 1 this year. So hopefully with your support, we can make that happen. So, if you're on a podcast channel, click like, give us a thumbs up, whatever it is that it is to show your support on the many podcast apps that we have out there. Please do so. We truly appreciate it. So with that, stay tuned to hear from AFFSO 21. But until next time, folks, I'm out of here.
Veteran-owned and operated AFFSO 21 Agile Fire Service Organization for the 21st century applies their extensive background in fire protection and emergency services to deliver support with identifying, developing, implementing, and maintaining strategies and techniques essential to operate and sustain an emergency response organization. AFFSO 21 services include staffing analysis, risk assessment, standards of cover, training, management, and financial reviews. AFFSO 21 is prepared to support your organization with increasing your capabilities values. For more information, please go to AFFSO21.com. That's AFFSO21.com.